Hello everyone, welcome to the Rift. Today, I want to talk about some budget decks, because if you haven't noticed, the market for this game has been going a little crazy. Yeah, so let's talk about some affordable cards. I'm going to talk about a couple of things in this video. First, I'll go over some budget deck lists that I think are pretty decent. Obviously, being budget, you're not going to get top tier optimal decks, but these are pretty good. And at least for a local play, at Nexus Nights, these will do just fine. After that, I'll talk about where I would rank each deck based on value for money, like how expensive the deck is for an optimal meta build compared to how good it actually is in the meta. Then I'll wrap things up by briefly talking about a competitive tier list for the game if you just want to see what the best decks in the game currently are. Alright, got a lot to talk about today, so let's just jump right into it. But first, if you're enjoying the content, then make sure that you like the video and feel free to smash that subscribe button. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, I have a link to my Patreon in the video description. Also, I have channel memberships now. They're just $1 and you get these nice badges next to your name whenever you comment or chat in live streams. Thank you to everybody who supports the channel, even just by watching videos. I really appreciate it. Alright, back to the video. Alright, first up here we've got Viktor. This is a slightly budget build of the deck. Out of all the decks I'm going to show you today, I think this is definitely the best one. I think this is the strongest deck you can build on a budget. It's pretty similar to standard Viktor lists that I would build, except you're missing Thousand-Tailed Watcher because that card's a little pricey right now, but you still have your big bomb win condition of Grand Stratagem, which I'm playing 3 of, and I needed another win condition for this deck so you could actually win games, so I threw in some Guardian. This guy can sometimes hold battlefields. He puts a decent amount of might on fields by himself, and backed up by Hidden Blade, that's actually a really good position to be in. Basically, with this deck, you just make a bunch of tokens, you go wide, you put a bunch of dudes on the board, you race to 6 points, and then you slam a Grand Stratagem and win. For battlefields, I like Obelisk going first, so you can play a token and a unit turn 1 to get 2 points turn 2, and points race faster. Warcamp and Reavers are good depending on matchups. You're probably going to lead off with Warcamp most games, especially against Kai'Sa. Don't give her Reavers. In the side, I've got Retreat for Kai'Sa, Salvage for Dazzling Aurora decks. Leona is for decks like non-Aurora builds of Yi, as well as other stuff that can wall out your tokens in the early game. Decks that like holding fields like Ahri or Teemo. Also good against decks like Ahri and Teemo is Falling Comet, so I'm playing 2 of that. You could try Singularity as well. But yeah, this is definitely a great deck on a budget. It's like $40 at time of recording, so that's definitely a steal. Yeah, go ahead and give this a try. The next deck I'd recommend playing is Yasuo. This is kind of a mid-rangey, control-y deck. A slower deck wants to go into the late game. Doesn't really take many points fast. Yeah, this deck is basically at full power, and it's like 70-ish bucks right now, so that's pretty good. Yeah, basically, you just go second with this deck, which is interesting. We play some 3-drops in this deck because it's really nice developing something like a wielder on the board turn 1, puts a decent amount of pressure onto the opponent, puts them in kind of an awkward position if they played a 2-drop. Yeah, this deck is fun. It definitely has its issues, but for locals it should do just fine, especially if you outplay your opponents. Battlefield order really depends on matchups for this deck. And in the side I've got Gust for aggressive things. Ride the Wind helps speed you up a bit against Aurora, and helps sometimes in some other matchups as well. Rebuke and Adaptatron are great into Aurora decks. Rebuke is also good into some other stuff like Set, maybe Teemo as well if they're playing stuff like Mundo. But yeah, overall, pretty decent deck. Definitely give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Next up, I've got Leona. It's a very similar deck to the one we just looked at. Ideally, you want to go first with this deck and develop a 4-drop on turn 2. If you can back that up with a Zhonya's, that's a pretty good play. This deck, like the previous one, is pretty decent. Again, I'd really only play it at locals because it does, again, have its issues. Battlefields, once again, kind of depend on your matchup, but I'd play Obelisk going second, so you have 4 energy turn 1, so you can slam a 4-drop, and that's pretty good. In the side, I've got Salvage for Aurora, an extra Hidden Blade. It's really good into matchups with big bodies, and Wall is decent into stuff like Time Warp and other big spells. Third Call to Glory is nice to have against Kai'Sa, and Blitz is really good against decks that want to hold, especially Yi. Yeah, this deck is alright, again around the $70 mark, so definitely go ahead and give it a try at that price point. Next, I've got Ahri, and this is a budget version of the deck because you can't play Thousand-Tailed Watcher or Time Warp, so I had to change the deck quite a bit, and you'll notice it looks very similar to the others that I just talked about, this also wants to go second and develop a 3-drop on turn 1, and then try and control the board from there and gain incremental advantage on your opponent until you have a board state that's just winning. You're probably going to be holding a lot with this stack. I put in some Mundos because there's really not another big blue thing you can put in that's good. Maybe you just don't even bother with him, I don't know. But yeah, going 3-drop into Blitzcrank next turn is actually pretty strong against a lot of decks. You do have some power plays you can do with this deck. I really don't think it's that bad. For locals play, it should be just fine. The deck should also be around 60 to 70 bucks, so at that price point, you can't really go wrong with it for just playing at locals. In the side, I've got an extra retreat for Kaisa again, some smokescreen for more aggressive decks that want to attack a lot, Adaptatron for Aurora, and Singularity for other decks like this, Teemo, Ahri, anything board-based really. Right, last one on our list here, I've got Teemo. He's a pretty fun deck to play. There's a lot of neat stuff you can do with him. Again, another deck you really want Watcher in, but you do have some good substitutes for top-end boss monsters that you can play in this deck. Mind Splitter is great, Dr. Mundo's pretty good, and Rasa is interesting in this deck because you can actually get him online fairly quickly, especially if you're playing on Warrens. Yeah, this deck seems decent. The ratios on this could probably use some tweaking, but it's a good starting point. Yeah, this deck focuses a lot on holding and trying to use hidden cards to not get knocked off of battlefields, and then slamming a big bomb like Mind Splitter or Mundo to finish out the game. In the side, I've got some Gust for aggressive decks, Retreat for Kaisa, Smokescreen for decks that are going to attack you with some decently sized stuff, Rebuke for decks that have big bodies, and Singularity for other board-based mid-range decks. Again, like Teemo's, Ahri's, a bunch of other stuff probably as well. Singularity has some nice coverage into the format. This deck is also only like 40 bucks, so that's a pretty good pickup for locals. Teemo's a pretty fun deck to play, so definitely give him a try. Alright, to end off the video, I'll be talking about each deck in the format and how good of a deal I think you're getting if you were to buy the full power version of the deck with all of the expensive cards and everything you would need to build what I think is the optimal version of the deck. So this list is going to be for full power meta decks, not for budget versions of decks, because really you can build any deck to be as cheap as you want, but it'll be a lot worse, obviously. Basically, decks are going to move higher up on the tier list based on either being cheaper or being higher tier decks in the meta. Some of the decks that I would recommend the most are Yasuo and Leona for previously mentioned reasons. The full power versions of these decks are just super affordable, like $60 or $70 for these decks is really good. They may not be the best decks in the world. I think they're either low or mid-tier decks, but for locals, they're definitely going to do just fine. And if you're really good and you can outplay people, they'll be decent picks. Other decks that I think are decent value are Lux and Viktor. These decks are pretty cheap except for Thousand-Tailed Watcher. That card's going to be expensive if you want the full power builds of these decks, but in the case of Viktor, at least you can get away with playing like 2 Watcher and 3 Grand Stratagem if you shift the build of the deck a little bit to look more like the budget list that I covered. Grand Stratagem is still a really strong card and it's very affordable, so even if you're just playing the budget build of this list, I think it's still pretty good. Viktor is just an extremely consistent deck. He's always gonna do his thing. His legend ability is just always there, and being able to slam Grand Stratagem and just win at 6 is very strong, and being essentially the only deck in the format that can consistently put 2 bodies on the board when you're going second is also really good. Decks in this middle tier I have here, some of them are quite expensive. Set, Kaisa, Annie are very expensive decks, but they are some of the best decks in the format, especially Kaisa, I think is one of the best decks. So although the deck is quite expensive, you are getting your money's worth because you're getting one of the best decks in the game. Set is also pretty pricey, but he's very strong as well. Annie also extremely strong, but very expensive. Teemo and Ahri are less expensive. Really the only card you have to shell out for is going to be Thousand-Tailed Watcher, and you definitely want 3 copies of that card. So they're going to be less expensive than stuff like Kaisa and Sat, but they're also going to be less powerful by a little bit. And Darius is also pretty expensive for the hook build, but also pretty good. Decks in the tiers below this, I honestly think you should just avoid. Jinx and Lee Sin are honestly low tier decks while still being decently expensive. Sure, you can build labeled them as budget versions, but they're going to be a lot worse. Jinx really wants Darius, maybe some number of Falling Stars and Red Kaises as well. Those are going to be really expensive, and you're really not getting your money's worth with this deck. It's the same with Lisa, and he really wants Orange Set, and you probably want some number of Dead Blooms as well, and those cards are extremely expensive. Yeah, these decks are just not worth it in my opinion. And for the absolute most expensive decks, anything with 3 Dazzling Aurora and 3 Dead Bloom Predator is going to be very expensive. At one point, it was like $500 just to buy those 6 cards. They've since gone down in price, but it's still like $300-ish to get all of those. So yeah, it's just extremely expensive. These are the most expensive decks in the game, and until prices cool down, I would just avoid these decks. In my opinion, if you want to shell out for a meta deck and get your money's worth, you should just pick Kai'Sa for now. Maybe Set, maybe Annie. If you're on a little bit tighter of a budget, you can pick up Teemo or Ahri. And if you just want to play the game for as cheap as you can get a full power deck, Yasuo and Leona are definitely good picks. And as a quick refresher, I've updated my overall tier list of all of the decks in the current meta based on how good I think they are. It looks a little bit different from the tier list I used in my video. It's been about a few weeks since then. I've had some time to think more and do more testing. Basically, Kai'Sa and Yi are the best decks in the game until proven otherwise. They've demonstrated a level of success so far that no other decks really have. All the decks in tier 2 I think are definitely competitively viable. They're roughly ranked in order from best to worst, from left to right. I think MF, Annie, and Set are all very good decks. If I had to make a tier in between tier 2 and Kai'Sa and Yi, I would put them in there, but I didn't because I think they're closer in power level to the other stuff in tier 2 than they are to Kai'Sa and Yi. The amount of success that these 2 decks have demonstrated is just on a different level from the other decks on this list until something drastic happens in the format. The rest of the decks in tier 2 I think are pretty good and can still do decently well at big events, and then the decks in lower tiers I just would not bring to bigger tournaments. I don't really think they're that viable. Decks in Rogue are still okay. You can definitely do well with them at locals, and decks in the lowest tier I think are still definitely playable at locals. You can still do well with them, but I definitely would not bring them to a bigger tournament. They're just a little too underpowered right now. Alright, I think that's about all I wanted to cover today. I've been having a ton of fun playing the game so far and opening packs and stuff. Let me know what decks you guys have been playing and how it's been going for you. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Take care.